Hello and welcome to Marxist Voice. I'm your host for today, Adam Booth, the editor of Socialist.net. And today we're going to be discussing with Rob Sewell, who I've got here on the line, about the situation inside the Labour Party in the wake of the Labour leadership result. At the weekend, obviously, Keir Starmer won, Rob. And in the last 2 days already, we've seen the establishment kind of celebrating Keir Starmer's victory. And we've seen him appoint a shadow cabinet, where he's gotten rid of a lot of the left-wingers that were there before. So, how is it that this change has happened? That we've gone from the kind of Corbyn era with the left-wing policies and so forth, suddenly to having this champion of the establishment in the driving seat. Can you explain a bit about how this change has managed to take place in such a rapid space of time?
Well, I think first of all we must say that the victory of Keir Starmer was a setback for the left in the Labour Party and the Corbyn revolution, to give it a term. But I think we need to have a look at the broader perspective, really, in order to understand and appreciate what's going on. Because there are a lot of people out there in the party are bewildered, some are very sad, some even threaten to rip up their party cards and leave, in frustration about what has happened. But I think we need to take a bit of a broader view here. And of course, the Labour Party was established, 120 years ago by the trade unions and socialist societies to represent the interests of the working class in Parliament, as opposed to the Tories and the Liberals. Although it wasn't a socialist party, that didn't come about till 1918 with the adoption of Clause 4, Part 4, which was to bring in common ownership of the means of production and do away with capitalism. Now, originally, the formation of the Labour Party was created by horror from the ruling class, and they tried to destroy the Labour Party. They tried to stop the unions funding the Labour Party. Just as incidentally, they tried to stop and crush the trade unions at an earlier phase, but they found they couldn't do it, and therefore they had to find some other way of managing the situation. So they wanted to control the trade unions, which they managed to do through the leaders, the right-wing leaders. In the same way, you want to control the Labour Party through its right-wing leadership and the right-wing elements in the party itself. And that's what they've been doing, really, right up until 2015. In a sense, it was, they alternated between the Tory party and Labour government and Tory government, like twiddly-dee, twiddly-dum, and if the Tories weren't doing well, but the Labour, the second 11 Labour reformers in power to clean up the mess. Once they've done, then the Tories could come back in. But that came to an end 2015 with the election of Jeremy Corbyn as leader, which was a reflection of the enormous change in society coming from the 2008 crisis of capitalism, in effect, the austerity and all the things that happened since that time. And the party was transformed, opened up 500,000 members. Left policies were brought in for the first time for a long, long period of time. And there was a fundamental change that was taking place. And the ruling class lost control of the Labour Party, the first time, you could say, forever. And they were extremely alarmed by this, because the Labour Party was used by them and they were in a safe pair of hands, if you like, in order to use it to stabilise the situation, control the working class in many ways. But they'd lost control, so this was a very dangerous precedent for them. Incidentally, they lost control over the Tory party as well. That's another matter. But they never gave up, in the sense of trying to reclaim the party. And whereas Corbyn won a big majority of the membership and had support amongst this entirely new membership coming in, only 10% of the parliamentary Labour Party supported Corbyn. They were the vast bulk of them were left over from the Blair period and the early period. They hadn't changed at all, and they were against Corbyn completely. And they are the, if you like, the agents, I would say. Let's be clear about it. Of the ruling class in the Labour Party. They're the safe pair of hands. They want to reclaim control over the Labour Party. And therefore they started a campaign for the last 4.5 years from the word go in order to try and undermine him, discredit him, and drive him out of the leadership. That's what they tried to do, day in and day out. And of course, we know the history. They attempted to have this coup against him in 2016, but Corbyn came back with a vengeance, with a bigger majority. The party conference was shifted to the left and supported Corbyn. The machine had shifted to the left. Everything seemed to be, on a very good trajectory, and lots of people were enthusiastic about this. But of course, history doesn't move in a straight line. You can't accept everything is going to be as it is, as you think it would go. It's a struggle of living forces, and the ruling class weren't prepared to give up the Labour Party, and they would fight like hell to get it back. They weren't going to give up, because a few people who left the Labour Party, but the bulk of them stayed with the view of attempting to discredit Corbyn. And they latched on to this idea of anti-Semitism in particular. They blew it out of all proportion, and as a means of a whip against Corbyn and the left. Unfortunately, as we know, a lot of people capitulated to this, and the biggest problem, I would say, is that was the weakness of the Corbyn leadership, insofar as he was, Corbyn himself went through hell, and in order to maintain his position, he was going into the Parliamentary Labour Party every week in, week out. Was going into a bear pit of opposition and intrigue against him. It's incredible how he maintained his position for so long, really. But nevertheless, the only way around this problem was to tackle this issue head on. That is, the Parliamentary Labour Party was completely out of sync from the real membership of the party, and only by bringing in democratic reforms, that is, automatic reselection of members of Parliament, were you going to solve this? Because if you don't solve it, they were going to come back with a vengeance, and eventually, they could turn things around, and that's what exactly has happened now. They put everything against Corbyn, because they tried to get rid of Corbyn after they thought that and these Blairites, they got no scruples. They wanted the Labour to be defeated in 2017, and they were ready to go for Corbyn, but he managed to pull it round. And you remember at the time, the opinion polls were against Labour, and they were screaming and shouting that he should resign and stand down, and a huge campaign in the media and the capitalist media in order to try and discredit him. But he stuck his guns, and in the election, because he went around the country, he managed to turn the situation around, and we won the biggest increase in votes since 1945. So they had to bear, they had to, play a longer game now in order to try and discredit him. But the intention was they had to get him out. Once they got Corbyn out, then they would start to unwind the Corbyn revolution. That's the way they saw it. And of course, their biggest chance was in December of last year in the general election, where Labour was defeated. They exaggerated the defeat, of course. We're not. Of course, it was a defeat, and there was the lowest number of seats since 1935. That's true. But they won more votes than 2005, more votes than 2010, more votes than 2015. And yet, this was all forgotten, and then this is a disaster, an even a greater disaster, and it was painted as something that something fundamental had to change, and there was panic after that. Unfortunately, Corbyn was forced into resigning then, and they demanded an immediate resignation. The Blairites, they were immediately on the television, howling and screaming. All the Blairites, Lord Straw and all the others, the zombies who came out trying to get rid of them.
The Night of the Living Dead, didn't it look like?
They are the living dead, yes, politically. But and in that way, they created a bit of a stampede. The left was wrong-footed completely, and Starmer, who had been in the shadow cabinet, he was responsible for this shift towards a pro-EU position. He was for the second referendum and so on, which damaged the position in the Labour Party. He was responsible, and unfortunately other lefts went along with him as well. And he was positioning himself. He got back. He joined the chicken coup in 2016, but he came back into the cabinet because he was positioning himself for the future. That was quite clear, and that's exactly what was happening. And the way he was able to put it forward is that he was the unity candidate. he was a soft, or a left look, my credentials, and we wouldn't attack the Corbyn legacy, but we shouldn't attack the Blair legacy. He tried to play this middle of the ground, middle path sort of position, and there was illusions in many of the membership to try and, is there any way around the problem we face? Because what was the left doing? They were apologising. We apologising for the defeat. We apologised for anti-Semitism. They came on very apologetic, which gave rise to a lot of confusion, I would say, in the ranks, rather than have a bit of backbone and say what was and say what is the position. They compromised and capitulated, and that was the same with Momentum, but also unfortunately with John McDonnell, who I think is a very good friend of ours, but he made a number of mistakes, and so did Jeremy, as a matter of fact. Because this idea of compromising, that we got to keep the party together. That's just on this basis they were willing to pounce, and they did pounce.
And it seems like that also paved the way for someone like Starmer to come in and, display himself as the unity candidate. It seems to be this kind of vacuous mantra that he's had, throughout the whole of his campaign. And even now, the first thing he said after he got elected on Saturday was, we're going to have unity. And I imagine that does have a big appeal to a lot of members who have spent, tireless, years kind of campaigning and all this infighting. Obviously the Blairites are to blame for that infighting with their sabotage, with their intrigues. But if you don't explain that those gangsters, those renegades, are the ones who are to blame for the defeat of the election, and then obviously the call for unity can be very appealing. You see with Starmer that today, he's announced his full shadow cabinet. A lot of it seems to be these kind of slightly innocuous, unknown figures. I personally haven't heard of a lot of them myself. Noticeably, there's very few left-wingers in there. I think Rebecca Long-Bailey has been given a kind of tokenistic position as shadow education secretary. But the rest of them seem to be the right-wingers like Rachel Reeves and Lisa Nandy, or these people who are kind of unknown quantities like Annalise Dodds as Shadow Chancellor. But at the same time, as I said at the beginning, the establishment have obviously welcomed Starmer, the Progress and Labour First, the Blairite factions. They've actually also celebrated Starmer's victory. So what do you think the reality is with Starmer? Where does he lie on the spectrum? Who does he really represent?
Well, you saw that with the shadow cabinet, as you said. I mean, what a slap in the face for the left. I mean, Rebecca Long-Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong, got 28% of the vote. And there's 32 members of the shadow cabinet. So you've got one left-winger out of 32. That's the reality of it. And, of course, Starmer is attempting to be very, play his hand very carefully, should we say. Because he knows the only way he could win this position was to appease and appeal to the left-leaning ranks of the Labour Party, and therefore the idea that he's going to try and shift very rapidly to the right, I think is not the case. It's not going to be immediate change to Blairism, as some people think. He's going to tread very carefully. Of course, he's going to be under pressure, and of course, they say, he comes from the soft left and so on. Well, he comes from as far as we can say, he's on the right of the party, and basically he was quite clear that what he had a chance to say, even on the television the other day. Well, isn't the Tory government carrying out sort of Corbyn ideas in this massive state intervention and so on? Well, he could have said yes, that's right, true, but no, didn't want to say anything about Corbyn and so on. A fear of alienating, of course, the Blairites in the party. But he's going to be under enormous pressure to carry out the dictates of capitalism, basically. And there's a huge, not only the Blairites are going to be pushing, but the whole of capitalism and all the apologists of capitalism are going to be talking about he must be statesman-like, which he likes to be, and he's going to go and try and push him further and further down this road. And he's made indications of anti-Semitism had to be dealt with and so on, so to root this out. Well, how is this going to play out? That's what I would know. How is this going to? You got Lisa Landley. After all, she's been made foreign secretary, and her position was if Labour doesn't change, then it's going to be the death of the Labour Party. What does that mean then? Labour doesn't change. In other words, do we abandon all the policies? Because that's what they're looking at. But of course, they have to tread carefully. They can't do it immediately. They have to test the ground, and there's going to be a battle on, don't worry. Definitely. They're not in a very good position. It's not like Kinnock, by the way, when he became leader, and he also was the unity candidate. They're all unity candidates, because that's one way of conning people, and we'll see the real, Starmer, the real position as it emerges. And the Blairites are backing him fully because they believe that he'll be the stalking horse for their victory,
Yeah, and you talked about this pressure from the Blairites that they're going to put on him, on behalf of big business, as it's the Blairites have always done, represented big business inside the Labour Party. And yes. You've seen a lot of these big business journals, The Economist, the Financial Times, the Sunday Times, Murdoch-owned, obviously. They're all trying to give the marching orders to Starmer. They've been talking about, even before he won, the need for a scorched earth policy, get rid of everyone around Corbyn. And in fact, even this campaign against anti-Semitism, I see they've even called for Corbyn's scalp himself, the actual... Yes. Get rid of Corbyn from the Labour Party altogether. Basically they're not happy until they completely eliminate all the remnants of Corbynism. And as you say, they will likely use this question of anti-Semitism. So what kind of pressure are the Blairites and their mouthpieces in the press trying to put on Starmer? What do they want to see the Labour Party return to?
Well, they want to see the party return to the good old days, and their idol would be Tony Blair, and Gordon Brown. But it's a different period, that Blair and some had the fortune of being in a world upswing, a world boom, Now we're in a totally different period, but they want you've had a purge of the left, Ian Lavery's been booted, all the key lefts have been removed. And, of course, if Corbyn had done that, they would have been held to play. But, of course, this is all good because it represents the interests of capitalism. But Starmer will be under enormous pressure, and he will get, in my opinion, he will test the ground out. He'll first of all, get the shadow cabinet to be under the grip, and their ideas is more pro right wing. Then the machine will be cleared out. And then they'll try and mobilise the right wing in the constituencies to try and win the conference over, and that'll be a big battle, in my opinion. And in order to get rid of the policies, like Kinnock did, they want to do the same. They hate these policies. They're too anti-capitalist. They're too pro-left. They want to water them all down, and therefore that's where the big battle is going to be, in my opinion, in the Labour Party. And those people who think they should leave now, I think they're making a big mistake, because the fight is now going to start. It's not. There's been nothing. I understand that people are going to be disappointed, but the struggle in the labour movement is not a one-off struggle. If in the trade unions, we were quite aware that many strikes are defeated. Before we win, that doesn't mean and what you were supposed to do is give up the ghost and go away. No, and the right wing also won victories in the past. Even trade unions, we were told, would never be able to go to the left. And we argued, no, it could go to the left on the basis of the struggle of the working class. It didn't seem possible, but then they shifted to the left. Look, the Railway Workers' Union is a left-wing union, but when it started out as the NUR, it was led by Sir Sidney Green again, and Lord Cooper in the GMB. The whole number of instances where the right-wing unions just shifted to the left when people say it couldn't be done. And you also had the other way around. In the AU, for instance, in the Engineering Workers' Union, the left controlled it for a period under Scanlon, and then the right-wing were victorious. But we didn't say leave the union and start your new union. You had to continue the fight to win it back. And now you've got Unite, if you like, which are far, far to the left now on the basis of the TNG and the AU, joining forces, Amicus and so on, joining forces. So it's a struggle. It's not something that's a one-off thing.
Definitely.
And I believe that this there's all people say, the Labour Party is done for. No. The Labour Party is going to be transformed again on the basis of events. It's events that do it, not this or that instance or this or that it'll defeat. Look how fast the situation's changed for the Tory government. Look at how events have changed in the last weeks, let alone months. And we've got the biggest economic crisis of capitalism in the history of capitalism. This is the period into a bigger depression than you had in the 1920s and 1930s.
Rob, before you go into that, I mean, just to bring it back to this question, you mentioned this isn't going to be like Kinnock in the 80s, which some people seem to be worried that it will be. I guess the big difference now on the one side is obviously people have got the experience of the last few years as a point of reference. We know that you can change the Labour Party. We've also learned a lot of lessons as to the limits of what's possible, in terms of relying on compromises and concessions. So there's a lot of experience there, and a lot of these activists who've taken control of CLPs in the last few years, they're not going to just hang up their boots and go home now, I imagine. In my own CLP, I know that the branch secretary, the CLP secretary, joined the party in 2015, as did the neighbouring CLP secretary. And these people have committed themselves to carrying on the fight for Corbyn's ideas, Corbyn's policies, and to continue the transformation. So there's that whole mass movement that's been created, that genie that's not going to be put back in the bottle. But the other thing is, as you say, we're in a different period now from the Kinnock era. Then it was a period of upswing, but now we're in a period of capitalist crisis. So how does that change the perspectives in terms of the Labour Party?
Well, it's good. That's the whole point. I mean, I would say that, people do learn as well. I think there's been a few painful lessons which have been learnt. When the right wing get control, they tend to go for the jugular. They don't mess about. They just sweep everybody out. When the left get control, they're ambivalent. They want to compromise. And what a golden opportunity was missed. And that includes the trade union leaders as well. When Unite's policy was the bringing back of automatic reselection of MPs, and yet in 2018, when there was a golden opportunity to carry that policy through, which would have transformed the entire situation, they failed, and it shows the weakness of reformism, if you like, as we call it, an attempt to placate, the obviously with a broad church, etc. No, we're supposed to be a socialist party.
Definitely,
we want to change society. That's the message. Of course, the capitalists and those who are agents don't want it on that line. But I'm afraid, what's going to happen now is that this economic crisis, and it'll be 2 or 3 times worse than it was in 2008 and 2009, and that's putting it mildly. We're in for the biggest economic crisis capitalism has ever faced. It's going to give rise to enormous austerity, enormous attacks on the working class because of this. They want to rip back all the gains of the past. They cannot afford it. And therefore, there's going to be a heightened of class movements, in my opinion, in society, and it'll affect not just the working class. The trade union movement is going to be turned upside down in the next period. And of course, the Labour Party is not going to be isolated from this process. The trade unions were lagging behind. They can catch up with a vengeance. The rank and file and so on become very militant when you have to be. It's okay if capitalism can deliver the goods, everybody's happy with capitalism. When capitalism is robbing you left, right, and centre, then people think, what the hell's going on? And that's the whole point that there's been in a period of storm, of stress, and this is going to be, the idea that this is going to be a gentle little transition, and you're going to, a nice little reformist policy. There's going to be upheaval, upheaval, I would say, big battles.
Definitely.
And we have to be part of those battles to argue for socialism, not patching up capitalism. That's been the problem, yeah.
What do you think Starmer and the Labour leadership now, how do you think they will respond to this national crisis? Because obviously you've already got talk of some even Tory ministers saying, bring Labour into the government, basically try and smear them with some of the shit that Boris Johnson's having to take on the chin at the moment. And then at the same time, as you say, there's no room for reforms. All of the money they're spending today, they're going to demand in terms of austerity tomorrow. So there's very little room for manoeuvre on the behalf of Labour, and in fact the Tories are actually nominally carrying out policies that John McDonnell himself was offering before the election in terms of this kind of universal basic income, Keynesian measures. So, how can Labour respond to this crisis?
That's right. Well, obviously the Tories are doing it to try and rescue capitalism. Our message is to hell with capitalism. And let's take over the banks, not bail them out. Take them over, take over the industries, and plan the economy in the interests of working people, under workers' control, democracy, and so on and so forth. That's a real alternative. Unfortunately, you have some of the Tories want to embroil Labour in some sort of national government or some sort of national initiative, so they'll take the blame. I mean, have we not learnt the lesson of the Scottish referendum campaign where Labour jumped into bed with the Tories and the Liberals and got smashed in Scotland? Precisely, that's the whole point. You either got to fight your corner in a class way, a socialist way, an independent way, and expose your enemies and expose these people. How can we have confidence in Boris Johnson and his government when they've been the ones who were prepared to carry out this austerity and smash the health service, and we're completely ill-prepared for this epidemic that's followed. So, there's plenty of room for Labour if they wanted to, but of course, I think that, Starmer, he wants to play it clever, he's a statesman and all the rest of it, and I think there'll be a big backlash in the rank and file, and if there's any attempt to move against Corbynism, trying to abandon the left road, I think there'll be a backlash. And on the basis of a crisis, socialist measures are more relevant now than ever before. That's the point. What are you going to do? Milk and water policies that are going to, a bit of Keynesianism. This is Keynesianism in that sense. The budget deficit is going to go through the roof. They're going to borrow like hell. The only problem is, who's going to pay the bill at the end of the day? And it's the working class who's going to be asked to pay the bill through austerity, cuts, and a tax on living standards. But I'm afraid that's going to stir the working class up, isn't it? It's going to increase the to fight and to look for a way out. And, the working class is very sober. It'll turn to its organisations it's already created. It's not to create new ones. What's the point? It'll go to the trade unions, and through the trade unions, back into the Labour Party itself. That's been the history for the last 120 years. Yeah. And therefore, that is where the fight is going to be. And we have to play our part in arguing these ideas for socialist transformation of society, no messing about, no compromises, as the only solution to the problems facing working people. That's all it is.
Well, that leads us on to the final question then, because we've actually got quite a lot of people watching at home, obviously very keen to know where next, what to do next. You've seen, as you said, some people have ripped up their cards and walked away. We've got a couple of viewers who've asked, what happens now to the 300,000 people who've joined the party in the last few years because of Corbyn, or the young people who've been inspired by Corbyn, or the people who've been radicalised on the basis of events. What's your message to socialist activists now in terms of, where we go next from here?
Well, the first thing, we have to stay and fight. There's no, why give up? Have these people won? I don't think so. They've had a bit of a go, they've had a bit of success. But as my friend, Tony Blair said, the only real way you're going to take the Labour Party back is to expel 300,000 people. That's the way they're looking at, and it's a bit, easier said than done, as we know. But that's they have to purge the Labour Party completely and utterly if they're going to try and pull it back in the direction they want to go. So there's going to be quite a storm and stress and battles ahead. Of course, the left need to get organised, not just roll over and play dead and and sow illusions that the Starmer leadership's going to be a way out. But we should say the left needs to get organised, not like Momentum in a bureaucratic top-down way, a democratic rank and file left of the party, but not just fighting on organisational questions, but fighting for socialism, fighting to change society, fighting to get the Labour Party back as a weapon to overthrow capitalism. That's the real way we got to go, because otherwise it's going to be a reformist party. It's going to be a disaster insofar as trying to patch up a diseased, bankrupt system which is attacking the working class. There's no middle ground there. That's the whole point. The middle ground is disappeared fast. And therefore, yes, we have to build up the forces, build up the strength of the left in the constituencies, in the party conference, in the trade unions as well, because it's not a question simply of the Labour Party. The unions must be part of this struggle as well. And in that way, to fight for these ideas, we have a campaign going on restoring Clause 4, a new word version from Tony Benn. which I think is a very, very good platform to fight on, you know, to restore the real socialist commitment to overthrow capitalism and bring about a democratic socialist society in Britain. That's the vision we need, not tinkering with society. And we launched this roadshow with Evan. In fact, we have to connect with other left wingers in the party to organise the rank and file to no retreat. On the contrary, it's not a question of retreating, but advancing, as I would say. We've got to advance these ideas because these ideas are more relevant now than ever before. And therefore, you know, our time is coming in that sense. The idea of a patch of capitalism is gone. Those ideas have been tried and failed, you know, and therefore we should be heartened that we've got the ideas. And if you've got the ideas, you're at the right place at the right time with the right ideas, then you can have a major impact. And that's why, you know, these ideas are going to be very relevant in the storms that lie ahead, in the crisis that lies ahead. More and more people, young people, older people, are going to draw conclusions. We need a fundamental change in society. And they are the people who will come into the trade unions, into the Labour Party, and they will strengthen, and the Labour will be transformed again. Don't worry about that. These people will be, you know, are not going to be there for life. They'll be transformed, and the Labour Party will go even further to the left. And I think they'll bring in democratic reforms, yes, not to allow a set of parliamentary gangsters call all the shots. So we want the rank and file need to have control over its representatives. That's democracy, and that's what should happen as well. So a fight for democracy in the party, accountability, but also the need for bold socialist policies to offer the British people something to fight for. And you know, because more and more people will realise it needs a fundamental change. So that's what we got to link into. And you know, Socialist Appeal will play this important role as well. As Marxists, we understand that you know, capitalism cannot be reformed, and some, you know, our friends on the left think it can be reformed and think it's an illusion. It's utopian. You know, capitalism is in terminal crisis. It's an organic crisis. It's not going to recover from this. You have to look to the 1930s as a perspective, and the only way capitalism was able to save itself in the 1930s was a World War II, destroying the productive forces. They can't have a World War now because of nuclear weapons. So all these problems will be internalized. So we're in for a very, very convulsive period. But Marxism gives you a compass, gives you a perspective, gives you a scientific analysis of what is going on. Not just to see, you know, just what's happening tomorrow, but what's the long-term trends, how to fit yourself into them. Above all, it gives you a backbone, you know, what you're fighting for. We don't have to buckle, and we don't compromise with capitalism. We don't compromise with the representatives of capitalism. We know what we want, and we'll fight for what we want. And in that way, I'd appeal to viewers, you know, join with us. Join the Socialist Appeal. Help us build the Marxist tendency within the Labour Party, to strengthen the left, but give it also a backbone of scientific ideas, a real socialist programme that can offer a way out for workers in Britain and internationally for that matter.